strategy. Mr. Kende Mamigweton also described the incident as unfortunate and regrettable, but we see too many of these unfortunate and regrettable incidents happening on the streets of Lagos. What are your comments?
Well, this is it. We saw people get annoyed yesterday because, first of all, RIP to the dead. Deepest condolences. Recriminations, yes. Let's stop hiding away from recriminations. When it's negligence, it's negligence, it's negligence. Let's call it what it is. And this is negligence. This is lack of maintenance. This is road safety. These are people not doing their jobs. This is negligence by the owners of the truck. And it goes on. And the list literally could go on. And if we really did our jobs properly in this country, many people would be in jail as a result of this. Seriously, many people would have been charged. I have no doubt that the chances are nobody will be charged. And that's where we continue down our. One more politician tell me, pray for the dead, commiserations. Governor Ambode was there. Buhari also sent a message. Look, that is one thing that they do in the West that people actually started to get annoyed about. Like, seriously, okay, yes, you've got to say something nice. I know it, and your speechwriter has to write it. But how about just following up with actions? Because if you follow up with actions, then I know you care about me, like we were discussing here yesterday, on this show yesterday. And I'm so angered by this. It doesn't even begin. I can begin to explain my anger. How many people died? 9, which is 8 adults, 1 child. It was rush hour. People were rushing home from work. It's hard enough working and living in this country, in this city. And then what happens? So apparently eyewitness mixed up with PR. They are two very different things. And what we seem to be getting more and more these days is PR rather than journalism. Eyewitness reports was all over the news. One thing I must say is I was comforted because when you hear a disaster in Nigeria, the first thing you try to do is turn to the news. Remember, it never used to be breaking news. Now we're getting breaking news. So I was comforted to see that all the news channels were covering it yesterday. And as a result of that, we're able to hear from the eyewitnesses brake failure. How brake failure causes you to roll back, I don't know. But
it's a slope.
Right. Okay, it goes down or it goes up?
No, it goes
I
up
don't know that brake.
It was going up
backwards.
so
And you rode backwards. There you go. So brake failure is, and also the co-driver, who they call the conductor of the truck, the co-driver of the truck actually tried to alert people saying our brakes were failing. The person behind him, the man in the car behind him saw it and he tried to alert others. But of course in Nigeria, again, this is the thing. We have a mistrust and distrust culture. If people come to you and say, get out of your car, you're going to think, Ole, you're not going to answer them. And that's what happened. Like a lot of people didn't take note very quickly.
There are 2 loopholes that I find in this occurrence that happened. Actually, now one of them is for those tanker drivers, the conductors usually have like wooden objects that they use to act as emergency braking systems, manual braking systems. That's one. Emergency services in Lagos.
Well, this is let's go into the emergency services as you've gone. We did have them turn up. They did. I think they actually did a very good job. For once, I was able to say, wow. Every single, it was the holistic approach. And I loved the way they coordinated it, the way they were there, and they spoke well. Unfortunately, one of them made the dreadful error, but again, it's for lack of vocabulary and language. He said, oh, we have a slight issue here. No, my dear, you don't have a slight issue. You have a carnage and tragedy and whatever. So, but they did coordinate it very, very well. So I have to commend Lagos State for that. However, how do we stop this from happening again? How? Because if there's one thing we can all bet our last mortgage on, is that it possibly will happen again.
Ms. Ireti, thank you very much for that. I think you mentioned very, very core, very important things, which is a responsibility that everybody has to just do their jobs and do it thoroughly and do it well. We do have to move on. However, our next story is in from the Vanguard newspaper. Perhaps on a slightly lighter note, there is no more Abacha loot in our country. The Swiss government are declaring this loud and perhaps proud, and they're quite insistent on this. And now the story does tell us that with the successful repatriation to Nigeria of over $1 billion that had been stashed away by the late Nigerian head of state in Switzerland, we're being told now that there is no more Abacha loot left in the country. And the Swiss ambassador to Nigeria, Eric Mayores, made the this declaration at a ceremony that was hosted by the embassy to examine the asset recovery efforts between Nigeria and Switzerland using the Abacha loot as a focus. Mr. Ireti, your thoughts on this, and also touching on other people who tend to hide loot outside of the country.
Well, yes, let's touch on them, shall we? Yes. So first and foremost, my thing with the Swiss is they're almost like a repentant kleptomaniac. I said it on this show before. I said, why is it everybody's stolen money has built up Switzerland?
Yes, they've got laws that protect the identity.
That's
of
all very. That's a thieving law. That's what I'm saying. It's like a repentant kleptomaniac. That's what they are.
And yet,
but it's not about blaming them. It's enabling thieving. It's aiding and abating thievery from other people's country.
So they've changed some of their laws.
That's what this guy is saying now. Like I said, a repentant kleptomaniac. I won't believe them until I see it's not happening again.
They didn't create the laws or the regimes for corrupt megalomaniac African dictators.
Actually, I bet you they did. I bet you they did. And I bet you, it doesn't have to be, say, Africans on it. I bet you, when you look, it's like baking a cake and pushing it in front of children and saying, oh, I don't expect you to touch that now. Mom and Dad will be back in half an hour.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, let's look at the people that created dynamite. They didn't intend for us to blow ourselves up.
Something like that. They expect you to blow something up, though.
Yes, but
exactly.
Not each other. Not each
they
other.
forgot about human feelings and emotions.
There you go. Anyways,
so very quickly. So yes, Abacha loot. Apparently, we've had the last of it. 321 million is the last lot that he gave to us. And what the Swiss is saying is, look, we've now changed the law, and it says here, let me quote the ambassador. As a way out of what led to the Abacha loot, we have signed. See, I told you they wrote it for Abacha. They wrote for Abacha back in the 20th century or whatever it was. As a way of what led to the Abacha loot, we have signed a mutual legal assistance treaty with Nigeria, and it is meant to enable us to track and expose those who want to bring in illicit wealth and prosecute them in accordance with the laws in place. It is to be made clear that the new laws in Switzerland do not allow for any stolen wealth to be kept in any place in the country. I hope so. Let's see if it's true. Moving down quickly in the story because we have to move on. So we're hearing that the Abacha loot has actually been used to create something called the National Social Investment Office. And this money is now being shared to all the states. Apparently, is it 21 states already have it now? And it's apparently this scheme has helped 270,000 households. If anybody knows anybody that it's helped, please send us an SMS. That's number one. Number two is National Social Investment Office, who is checking to make sure that it is being used for the right thing. And I can't understand. Anyway, let's move on. I never understand half of these things. But very quickly, basically, if you're a politician and you want to steal our money, you can't go to Switzerland. And let me tell you, you can't even go to the UK either, even in the US, because many of the current serving politicians will be arraigned.
All right.
Mark my words.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Ireti. We do have to move on. We've got messages coming in very quickly. Let's see if we can take a couple of them.
Maya from Akoka says, sad. Someone shared an eyewitness account with me and it was all shades of gory. Human lives lost at criminal negligence, in my opinion. Someone has to face the elephant in the room and regulate the tanker operators. This is cheap death. We deserve more. Bodurin said, no more Abacha loot are here. Which other loot is there? Benga Kamo said the Swiss haven't answered the question how the loot came to be hidden there in the first place. From history, the Swiss have always hidden money from the.
Of course, they have kleptos.
They've stolen money from other Nigerian leaders too. That's
very interesting, Benga. Okay, accusations there. But we move on. Let's talk about the appeal court. They've launched a mediation center to enhance justice delivery system, and we're taking the story in from Thisday newspaper. Now, it was the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Walter Onoge, on Thursday, who commissioned the Court of Appeal Mediation Center. This part of efforts, of course, to make sure justice delivery becomes accessible to more. He says that it will reduce the workload of the judges, improve efficiency in the country's court system, and basically just put forward a new era for alternative dispute resolution in Nigeria, which is quite important. Ms. Ireti, your comments on this?
Well, I believe very much in mediation. I believe in the truth and reconciliation strategy or forum. I loved what it did for South Africa, and it's been used in many other parts of the world where you've had conflict. I also believe that a lot of the issues, and like the gentleman, what did he say? The judge said, he said here, let me quote him, the CGN was represented by Justice Olukayode Ariwola Ariwola enjoined judges to encourage the alternative dispute resolution mechanism in cases that are less contentious in order to decongest the jurisprudence. If there's one thing we know, that is that the Nigerian courts is totally, chocker, and it's not able to handle half the cases that it's got. And as a result of that, they send people to jail who just took
not
pure
in its
water.
totality.
Well, no, they just send people to jail who stole pure water rather than actually finding a way to reprimand them. I can't, because we've got to move on. There is actually an example of this that's happened in Oyo State that's been extremely successful. And when I say extremely successful, in regards to communal clashes with the likes, similar to what's going on with the herdsmen, and they've been using it for quite a while. Community courts, really, really smart. But I'm in science to move on. You're both doing I can see you both shifting in your chair.
Alternative dispute resolution, very important stuff, and yes, it will reduce the workload on the judges actually. But let's carry on now. This is in from the Vanguard newspaper next. The CBN are set to issue guidelines to regulate FinTechs. So the Central Bank of Nigeria currently in the process of drafting guidelines that will enable the regulation and the supervision of activities of financial technology companies in Nigeria. Tunde, your thoughts on this move by the CBN? They've been very involved in processes at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say very involved. That's even if you notice it from an outside the industry type of perspective, you realize that they're involved. So usually, typically what happens with what we've noticed anyway with CBN and how it has to do with regulations in the financial sector, especially other not just the banks. There's almost like a 2-year cycle, right? They become very active, then they be quiet for a year while you try to adjust, then they become active again. So regulation is important. It's part of the whole. If you have companies providing services, payment services or financial services within the country, and they go unregulated, it can create problems to systematically important systems like the banking sector. So regulation is important. The key thing is that the regulator stays. To regulate anything, you need to be at least on par, and hopefully not too far behind, and to the industry players, so to say. So you have to have decent and relevant knowledge to be able to regulate. The CBN has tried in that regard in recent years, even though it's had to catch up in many others. But it's been fair and decent, and they have tried to consult with industry practitioners before releasing regulation, even though sometimes when it comes out, it's of a shock to everyone. But it's good now that the focus specifically is on fintechs, and because of fraud. So it's important. Now we have a situation, people bandy the term fintech around like it's entirely new.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not. They've just coined something new. If you
some people don't know what it means. They tell them, our listeners.
If you're a company, if you're a company that if you're a technology company providing services to financial institutions, you're essentially a fintech. And the way the end user, people on the street would experience that is if you facilitate electronic, payments. So then generally you fall within that bracket, although it's a bit wider than that. But that's how people view it. People who help them carry their card payment traffic are fintechs. So there's focus on regulating. There are a bunch of new entrants. There are new things that have made it, that have sort of lowered the barrier to entry for people who want to. Before, it would be very large companies making very big investments and putting in place very big infrastructure. Now technology has evolved and moved forward such that smaller players can ride off of the back of what larger corporations have put in place using programming interfaces and so where there are a lot more players, you need to be more serious with regulation and keep a closer track on things so that you don't create systemic problems within the system. So this is good for people within the industries, like business as usual. But it's good that the CBN has this focus.
All right, we've got a few messages to read quickly up on our YouTube live chat. Chukuma Mama sends in a message saying, good morning guys. First of all, I want to say rest in peace to all those who lost their lives in the explosion yesterday, but how do we stop this from repeating itself? He does give a shout out to Sissy Oge saying you look good. And Unyilola Ademo says, good morning everyone, again commiserating with those who lost loved ones. May their souls rest in peace, and please let this be a wake-up call that we need to get rid of those tankers that are parked on the bridge. We need to to get them out of the way. Everyone's very
Oh,
worried now
Lord,
because we look at the
yes.
disaster from one tanker. Imagine what could happen if any of the ones that are parked side by side go off. Gwingus up on WhatsApp says, I now understand the reason why life expectancy in this country is so low, because anyone can die at any time of everything, and there is cause for worry because they've caused several avoidable deaths and the loss of valuable property. There are also several trucks with improperly screwed containers all over our roads, which can fall at any time, and might I add do, and crush people to death. And sadly, when the government decide to clamp down on them, their operators will threaten to go on strike. So for how long will the government be intimidated by operators of these articulated vehicles and be prevented from taking much needed action?
And we're supposed to have vehicle inspection officers on the road. Anyway, moving on now to Punch newspaper. Lagos-Ibadan Rail, federal government orders the China Civil Engineering Construction Company to commence work on the Lagos end of the project. They said they've been focusing on other parts, the regions around Oyo State, and they've asked that's Minister of Transport, that Mr. Rotimi Amechi has asked that they give updates on the rail project and they'll get back to work soon. He blamed the slow pace of work on the civil aspects of it, which he says is due to the bad weather conditions. Tunde, what do you think?
Are we the only ones that have rain?
Today's not having none of that.
We know about the December deadline is looming.
So I mean, the headline says orders them back to Lagos. And my question is, where did they go and why did they go?
Oh yes,
right.
Because their work was restricted by the waterways. They said the areas that they estimated it to cover is actually now smaller by assessment.
So they say. So we'll find out. Now, is this so? If they were upstate, they're in Oyo, and now they've been ordered to Lagos. Is there no plan and schedule as to how work is to be conducted?
Okay, they're meant to have another meeting soon. Before that meeting.
Exactly. So this is the issue. You execute a project, or you have a deliverable, you have a plan, right? Now, if within the plan they're meant to be in Oyo, why are you ordering them back to Lagos now? Is this driven by the occurrences or the accident yesterday? Right? You see the link?
Yeah.
So then again, is this just a soundbite? Are you disrupting the flow? There's a reason why they're in Oyo. You can say, okay, they're not working at the right pace that they should be working at. Fine, highlight that. But reactionary, knee-jerk, announcements like this don't really help anybody. Now, if this project in Oyo is at a certain stage or state, can they just abandon it? And what happens to what they've done there already? Now, the things that they've mentioned highlighted that, the reasons why they've not focused on pipelines that were, on the path and right of way, which would have affected construction, and they would have broken or disrupted those water pipes. They said their assessment was that it was 24 kilometers. Now, the ministry is saying, it's only 2 kilometers from assessment. So who is correct? It points to a lack of records and a proper plan of what, people just lay stuff and go. This same company, CCECC, the construction to build the airports. There was a story I got from someone within the aviation industry that said that the airport project was stalled. The one in either Lagos or Abacha was stalled because the plant sites ran over power lines.
Yeah.
So does this make any sense? Where we don't, it's until you start to dig the earth before you discover what's there. You would have issues like this.
Again,
right?
we go back to people doing their jobs.
And doing their jobs properly.
And at the right time.
The story about rain, look, I've seen construction companies construct roads under the rain. Like
under the water.
The rain is
under
pouring.
the Atlantic Ocean.
We know those companies.
So what are they saying? And CEC can do the same thing. So it's one, there's so many things that have they been properly mobilized, have their funds come out, because they can't come and make do press release like our government. It's only one side of the story.
Thank you, Tunde. Vanguard newspaper is next. The headline reads: World Bank approves $2.1 billion loan to Nigerian projects, or for Nigerian projects. It said the fund was released from the low interest arm of the World Bank. That's the International Development Association. They've released these funds to tackle problems really that Nigeria has with power and climate change projects, and especially giving attention to areas of fiscal transparency.
Yeah, so this is part of the federal government, looking from various sources to fund the budget. Budgets has been approved now, but before then we're looking for ways. Part of that is also not just taking loans, but also raising raising funds, using government bonds and other instruments for raising for debt. So this is part of that, and all these things need attention. The ones that what had me scratching my head though is how do you spend on promoting governance, and how that be measured. It seemed how do you measure it?
The underlying factors.
Exactly. I mean, what exactly will be done to promote governance, and you're spending money on it. So I'm worried about us spending money on the guys in charge today leaving time for our kids tomorrow on things that it's impossible for you to measure what they've done with. Infrastructure projects are important. Power, roads, those kind of things we can see, and we know that they're leaving behind. I think things like promoting government, we should just get our acts together. We don't need to spend money on things like like that in that regard. There is also there is $7 million of the grants earmarked for nutrition, which I find very sad. Is food. We've said that we've had a food crisis and there's a malnutrition crisis and issue in the country. And with all the arable land that we have, we shouldn't be in this situation. So it's unfortunate we're borrowing money to feed, right? I mean, to deal with here and now issues. I wish we got our acts together a lot more. The story points out that the economy is bouncing back, and the government expects the economy to return to pre-recession levels of 7% by 2020. Let's see how that turns out. In that recession we had isn't very much, but yeah, that's all in all. The stories about how they're funding the part of the efforts to fund the budget, and the World Bank has released funds for certain initiatives.
Thank you, Tunde. Premium Times newspaper has this story. CJN orders monthly inspection of detention centers to prevent police brutality. So the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Walter Onoyen, has wielded his powers, really reminding the magistrates in different states to actually do their civic duty, which includes going on monthly inspection of detention centers, because that's where they get the special attention from this story. That people, when we report cases of police brutality and certain acts that are inimical to the progress of justice in the system, that the CJN really by this call is reminding the magistrates of their civic duties.
Their duties, yeah.
So by extension, it can actually curb this police brutality occurrence.
To me, this is linked to the story 3 about enhancing justice delivery. Even if you've been convicted of a crime, you do have certain rights, and you should be treated in a certain way. Now, I mean, it's good noise. I hope it transcends just noise and brings about some sort of change. It talks about the myriad of ills that have happened. Where is it now? I didn't underline it, but the thing I wanted to bring out, they didn't highlight extrajudicial killings, which is also something that happened. Those kind of things. Our detention centers are populated, overcrowded, because people are not being processed correctly and not being processed on time. Like Mr. Ireti pointed out, people being held for pure water.
People are being held. They're being held well beyond the period for which people should be held.
For. Sometimes I hear stories of people just stroll out of their houses and they get picked up, and it's years.
Here's my question.
No one calls for you, and sometimes you hear something as ridiculous as a revenue drive, so they pick you up. The expectation is that you have people looking for you. So when they find you, they come and bill you, right?
With money.
With money, yeah. If nobody asks of you, you do
That's
nothing there. That's it.
I mean, doesn't this story underscore the lack of understanding of the laws? Because the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, this was quoted in Section 34. Is existence in the Constitution. It's there. Doesn't it mean that the chief magistrates do not necessarily pay attention to what they're supposed to be doing?
How many laws do we have here that are adhered to? So it's one thing.
So I was going to ask you: do you think it's that people don't understand the laws, or do you think it's that people just don't want to abide by the law?
On the one hand, well, the people who deserve the rights on the one hand very often don't know their rights and don't know the law, are unaware of the law, and the people who are aware of the law and in charge of administering the law are not particularly concerned, and there's no one holding them to account. That's the biggest issue.
All right. We've got a few messages. We see the messages, lots of comments up on our live stream. So a big thank you to everyone up there. Babasanja Oshin says, we're not that proactive in any way. We always react and we never keep up with that. While Abiodun Fatai says, yesterday was very painful. God protect us all. Lots of people, including Stan Igwe, offering their condolences to the families of those lost. While Ikechukwu Kalu comes back to say, only Nigerians who are alive will vote come 2019. If only our politicians will remember that, they will be more proactive. While up on WhatsApp, the messages are flooding in. Just make sure you put your names to your messages, please. This one is in from Chi, who says, did they say they're sharing Abacha loot to poor people in a country where there's no database, social security number, etc.?
Exactly.
How do they know who to share what to whom? Why not use the money for projects instead of borrowing? Buhari and his team are relooting the loot.
Another country to return the money.
Yes.
Again, just to remind everyone that the reason they say that is, back one of the conditions was that we reinvest in our social scheme. So it is the social investment scheme which this administration had sort of put in since 2015. So we can debate whether or not we like that scheme, but that is where the money is going.
Our final story to touch on from Guardian newspaper: Senate mulls law to regulate social media. Sir Abdul Fattah Buhari, Senate Committee on ICT and Cybercrime, has said that the National Assembly will make laws to regulate what Nigerians do on social media. What are your thoughts, Mr. Ireti Bakare?
Well, Nigerians themselves need to start actually regulating what they do and say on social media, because the amount of fake news to actually berate the celebrities who whip up emotion and hysteria on social media on their handles without so much as even checking both the figures and statistics. It is the most irresponsible thing. So yes, Nigerians themselves, I don't know if I want government to regulate social media, because I don't necessarily think I trust them to, because where does it stop? But I do think we are humans. We stopped, I think at one point in this country, we stopped believing in our own powers and capability, responsibility to government and to other people. Engage brain, logic and everything. Stop this nonsense. But I don't think I want government to regulate. No, sorry. To keep their finger
I
off.
think they have more important things to do.
I was going to say, our government regulating our roads and they keep us
They
safe.
keep either regulating
Exactly.
themselves and they want us to
The freshly pressed for this morning, a massive thank you to our analysts, Ireti Bakare-Yusuf, aka at CCECC Lagos, aka the only CC in the building right now. If you can see her up on
Very patriotic
on our
hairdresser.
YouTube, then you'll understand why people have been commenting on how she looks. Find her up online and continue the conversation there. And of course, Tunde Okufi, aka Big Cuffs, the one and only. You can find him up on Twitter by that same handle. Coming out African countries in the World Cup, that's a little bit
That's
sad.
sad.
But it's okay. I just switch allegiance. My Union Jack is coming out. Just fly.
I know, right? I'm so behind England.
They
England.
lost
No,
yesterday, though.
serious. No, but we
It's
can
okay.
still
Let's
get
not spread
through.
bad news here.
We
Good
can still
morning.
get through.
Good morning, Lagos.
Choose the innovative and smart.